Alright guys, today we're going to learn about how you find the distance between 2 points in a coordinate plane, but say you don't have the coordinate plane right in front of you, you just have the 2 points, the coordinates of the 2 points. What you can use is a distance formula for that. And the distance formula basically states that on a coordinate plane, the distance between between 2 points with the coordinates, you get the x and y from the first point, and the x and y from the second point is given by you take the square root of, you find the difference between the x's, so subtract them and square it, and the difference between the y's, so subtract them and square it, and then add it together and then take the square root. You'll find the distance. Now, this formula is actually based upon the Pythagorean theorem, but I'll explain that more when I get back. Now, you're going to need to kind of memorize this formula because I won't always give it to you. So for tonight's homework and everything, you want to write down the formula with each problem you do so you get used to it, okay? So let's actually go through a couple examples together. So the first thing you always want to do is write down your formula because we got to find the distance between A, which is -2, 1, and B, which is 4, 3. So the distance is going to be equal to the square root of. Now we're going to find the difference between the x's, right, and square it. And we're going to get the difference between the y's and square that. And then we're going to add them together and then take the square root. All right, so you can really technically subtract these in either order, but I tend to follow the formula and take this start with the x from the second point. So like the x from B is 4, and I'm going to subtract the x from point A, and that's -2, and we're eventually going to square that, plus the y from the second point is 3, and we're going to subtract the y from the first point, which is 1, and we're going to square that. So the distance will be equal to, now 4 minus a -2 is like plus a +2, so we're going to take the square root of, this will be 6 squared plus 3 minus 1 is 2, so 2 squared. And then we square those. We're going to take the square root of 36 plus 4, and the distance would be the square root of 40. Now 40 is not a perfect square, but often we'll want more, and that's technically like square root of 40 is maybe more accurate, but we want an actual distance. So this is where I'll allow you guys to use a calculator and do an approximate square root by plugging this in. And when we plug this in, it'll be 6.3, which makes sense because the square root of 36 is 6, and square root of 49 is 7, so it makes sense that it's between 6 and 7. So it's kind of a good mental check to make sure I got the answer and plugged it into my calculator correctly. Okay, so there's the distance between A and B is 6.3. Now let's try the next one. M is 1 and N is -2, 3. So the first thing again you want to do is write down your formula. It's the square root of, and we do the second x minus the first x, and we're going to square it, plus the second y minus the first y, and square it. Okay, so here, and make sure it's x's together and y's together. Don't mix the two. So like here, my second x is -2 minus 8. It's the first x. We're going to square that. Plus, my second y is 3. And my y from the first point is 1. And we're going to square that. So, we're going to take the square root of -2 minus 8 will be plus a -8. So this is going to be -10 squared plus 3 minus 1 is 2 squared. Okay, and we get -10 squared is 100. 2 squared is 4. So we're going to be taking the square root of 104. Now, I can always predict that it's going to be 10 point something because I know the square root of 100 is 10. So it's going to be a little bit over that. So when I do plug that into a calculator and get an approximate, I actually get 10.2, which makes sense. I knew it would be a little over 100. And there's my distance between M and N. Now, not a big surprise, guys. I'm going to have you guys show work just like I did just now. what I want you guys to do right now is, let's move this up. You're going to try these two practice problems right now. So I'm going to want you guys to pause the notes, and then we'll and try these two problems. You may use a calculator to get your final answer rounded to the nearest tenth. All right, and then when you're ready, when everybody's mostly done, we can turn back on the notes, and I'll go through the practice problems. Okay, pause in 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys, hopefully you've tried both the practice problems. Now let's go over them. We're going to start with writing our distance formula. The distance is equal to the square root of, we're going to take the difference of the x's squared plus the difference of the y's, square that, add them together and take the square root. So we're doing the square root of, when I subtract the x's, I'm going to be doing 2 minus 3 squared plus, when I subtract the y's, I'm going to have 5 minus 1. I'm going to square that. So our distance is going to be equal to the square root of, this would be negative 1 squared plus 4 squared, which would give me the distance will be equal to the square root of, negative 1 squared is 1, 4 squared is 16. Add them together, we're going to have the square root of 17. So then when we do the approximate and round to the nearest tenth, we're going to get 4.1, which makes sense because the square root of 16 is 4, so the square root of 17 would be just over that. All right, so number 2, between points C and D. Again, write down your formula first so you can start memorizing it. X minus x squared plus y minus y squared. Okay, so here we're talking, square root of. Okay, I'm going to do 3 minus a negative 2 squared plus, and then we have 7 minus a negative 4, and we'll square that. So the distance will be equal to square root of, this 3 minus a negative 2 will be plus a positive 2, so we have 5 squared plus, this would be plus a positive 4, so we'll have 11 squared. And the distance will be equal to the square root of 25 plus 121. So that will be equal to the square root of 146. Now, I know that square root of 144 is 12, so this is going to be just over 12. So take the approximate square root when you round to the nearest tenth is 12.1, so that makes sense. Okay, let's go now to the back of the page, and let's start some examples of that. There are some new examples. Okay, the nice thing about distance formula is we can use it in some different ways. You notice here in example 3 it says classify a triangle XYZ with vertices x is negative 2, 8, y is negative 3, 1, and z is 3, 3 by its sides. Alright, and then find the perimeter of the nearest tenth. Now if you remember, when we talked about angles and classifying by their sides, we're talking equilateral, isosceles, or scalene. So what we need to really do is we need to find the distance between each of the points to make the three sides of the triangle. Now, and then we can use those distances to find the perimeter. Now, what I want to do is basically I want to find the distance of x, y. So I'm going to find the distance between the point x and y. So I'm going to use my distance formula. Now, to save room here a little bit, guys, I'm not going to write down my distance formula. I'm going to go right down into plugging in the numbers. Okay, so if I look at x and y here, I would do, let's see, negative 3 minus a negative 2. Oops, and we're going to square that. And we're going to add, and it's going to be 8. I'm doing 8 minus 1 because that's like an easier problem to do. Remember, it doesn't matter which order you do these in. So the distance for x, y is going to be the square root of, this will be plus a positive, so we're looking at negative 1 squared plus 7 squared, which gives me, xy gives me square root of 1 plus 49 or xy is the square root of 50, which again is approximately, if we plug it into a calculator, 7.1. Okay, so there's one side of my triangle. So let's find another side. Let's say I do the side xz. Okay, I'm going to do the square root of. Now you got to look at your x point. Let me erase that, get that out of the way. Okay, and your x point and your z point. Okay, so I would do for my x's, it'd be 3 minus a negative 2 squared plus, and then for your y's, you have basically 8 minus 3 squared. Okay, so xz is going to be equal to the square root of, this will be plus a positive, so we're going to have 5 squared plus 5 squared, which gives me xz equal to the square root of 25 plus 25, or xz equals the square root of 50, which we just had the same as the last one. We know is approximately 7.1. So right now I know this is at least an isosceles triangle. It might even be like lateral. It depends. The one side we haven't found is the side, the YZ side. Okay, I'm pairing each of the letters once. So I got to find this side. If it's the same as square root of 50 or 7.1, I know it's equilateral. If it's different, I know it's at least isosceles. So let's see. Let's do the distance between y and z. So I'm looking at negative 3, 1 and 3, 3. So when I subtract the x's, I could do 3 minus a negative 3 and square that. Plus, and I'm going to do 3 minus 1 and square that. So for yz, I have, this is plus a positive, so I'm looking at 6 squared plus 2 squared. So yz would be the square root of 36 plus 4. So yz is equal to the square root of 40, which is approximately 6.3. So now I know I've got two sides the same. So right off I know the type of triangle it is isosceles. So there's the first part of my answer. Okay, because two sides are the same. Second part of my answer, I asked you guys to find the perimeter of the nearest tenth. So to find the perimeter, what you're going to do is, perimeter, remember, is the distance around the outside. So I'm going to add all the sides together. So I'm going to do 7.1 plus 7.1 plus 6.3. And when I add all those up and round to the nearest tenth, I get 20.5. And there's my perimeter. So you're basically doing 3 distance problems and then using your knowledge of the types of triangles to find the type from those 3 distances. Alright, I was going to have you guys do this next one as practice, but let's do it together. Alright, so let's go through this one. We got a new triangle XYZ, okay, with new points, and we're going to find what type of triangle it is and its perimeter. So let's again start. Let's do XY. Okay, we're going to do the square root of. So we're going to do, like, let's see, we got negative 2 minus a negative 5 squared plus, okay, we got, looks like 4 minus 1 squared. Whoops. Okay, so xy is going to be equal to the square root of, this will be plus a positive, so this is going to be 3 squared plus 3 squared, which xy would be the square root of 9 plus 9, or xy is equal to the square root of 18, which when we plug that into a calculator is approximately 4.2. Okay, so we've gotten the first distance. Now let's pair x and z. We're going to do the square root of. My x and z is negative 3 minus my x and x. The point x is negative 5. and we're going to square that plus. Let's see, we're going to have negative 3, minus, it's going to be 1, and we're going to square that. So xz is equal to the square root of, this would be plus a positive, so we're looking at 2 squared plus, it's going to be, this is like a negative 3 plus a negative 1, so we're going to have negative 4 squared. So xz equals the square root of, it's going to be 4 plus 16. So xz, we're going to have the square root of 20, which is approximately, when you plug it into a calculator, 4.5. So these two sides are different, so I know it's definitely not equilateral. It could be scalene. It could be scalene, all sides different, or it could be isosceles, depends on what this third side. Now, I've paired x with y, I've paired x with z. Now I need to pair y with z to find that distance of that third side. So here, I'm going to do a negative 3 minus a negative 2, square that, plus, we're going to have a negative 3 minus 4, square that. So yz is equal to, plus a positive, here we got negative 1 squared, plus, this would be plus a negative, so it's going to be a negative 7 squared. So yz is going to be equal to 1 plus 49, or yz is equal to the square root of 50, which is approximately 7.1. Okay, so all the sides are different, so this is a scalene triangle. All sides different. And then to find the perimeter, again, we add up all the sides. So we're looking at 4.2 plus 4.5 plus 7.1. And when we add those together, round, we get 15.8. Okay, guys. So you now know how to work with the distance formula, and you'll work some more. Make sure you show work on the homework tonight, but you can use a calculator to find that approximation at the end. All right. Good luck with it, guys.